Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. I hope you're having a great day. I know I am. Today's my wife's birthday. So before I do anything, let me be smart. Let me not make any mistakes here. Happy birthday to my lovely, lovely wife, Amelia Smith. Married 9 months as of yesterday. You know, are probably the best 9 months of my life in all seriousness. So happy birthday to my lovely, lovely wife, and happy payday to Danny Hurley, who is slated to get a big time contract raise from UConn, even though he already got one. Rob Dibble joining the Dan Dockett Show. He hosts a radio show up in Connecticut that carries the UConn game. So he talks to Hurley from time to time. So he's very much in the know when it comes to that kind of stuff. So he's expected to get a huge raise here at some point. And he's staying to pursue his third straight title. I think that's the only reason that you turn down a 6-year, $70 million deal, which would have made him the 6th highest paid head coach in the NBA, which seems insane to turn that down. But when we keep in mind that, you know, UConn's going to pony up the money here, it really makes a lot of sense. Right. And the raise that he's going to get is likely going to rival the $11.5 million a year that the Lakers were going to pay him. So it makes sense. He doesn't have to move his family. He's from the Northeast. He doesn't have to leave. He can just hang out in the same spot. But here's the thing. Danny Hurley's going to make the leap to the NBA at some point. I'd be surprised if he spent his entire career in college. He has said before that he has a desire to eventually coach the New York Knicks. That to me means that he's interested in coaching in the NBA. And I think that most college coaches would want to coach in the NBA. I would. Like, the pay tends to be better unless you're one of those top guys and you actually get a vacation every year. Okay, the Washington State head coach, after 30 years in college basketball, is leaving to become an assistant coach, not even the head coach. He's leaving to become an assistant coach for Phoenix. And I think because coaching in college, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, soccer, just whatever it is, it's hard. It's a lot. You're recruiting year round, and it's just a real pain. So the NBA does offer things that college basketball doesn't. It's also the best league in the world. All of these coaches are highly competitive. Okay, what competitor doesn't want to say that they once competed at the highest level in the world? Okay, these coaches have egos, and most coaches want to compete at the highest level. They just do, right? Danny Hurley is intense and competitive. He's as competitive a guy as you'll find in college basketball. At some point, he's going to leave for the NBA, but he doesn't need to leave for the Lakers job. The Lakers job, it's a good job. It'll always be a good job because it's the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers, that franchise, attracts more stars, whether it's via free agency or it's through, somebody saying, I want to be traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. They just attract stars more than any other team. They do. But the current state of the Lakers makes it not a great job. It's not a great job. Okay, UConn currently is a great job. Danny Hurley has come in and he's built that program into what he wants it to be, and that is hard to walk away from. Okay, you put in all this time, over, I guess he's been there for 4 or 5 years now, over the past 4 or 5 years, and things are finally rolling. The machine is finally clicking. And I don't think that he wants to leave that. And I think that he's doing the right thing and staying, even though one day I do believe that he'll leave. And here's the other part of it. He just doesn't feel like the Lakers head coach. The Lakers head coach needs to be relaxed, a little more hip, all those types of things. I think that was Darvin Ham's issue. He seemed like he was a little too tough to be the Lakers head coach. JJ Redick, though, doesn't seem too tough to be the Lakers head coach. If Danny Hurley was to leave the college ranks to go coach in the NBA, He feels like he'd be the head coach of the Pistons, the Knicks, the Celtics, even the Grizzlies, right? Like those are 4 franchises with a thorough history of toughness. And that's where Hurley needs to be. He needs to be at a franchise that embodies part of who Danny Hurley is, and that is extremely tough. He doesn't need to be at a flashy franchise like the Los Angeles Lakers. It's just not a good fit. And so I think he's doing the right thing and staying at UConn. And it's easy to turn down a good job like the Lakers' job is. It's easy to turn down a good job when you have a great one, when you're at a blue blood, when you're very well established and you know that raise is incoming. It's even easier to turn down a good job to stay at a great one when you have a good chance at three-peating in a sport where a three-peat hasn't happened since UCLA won 7 in a row, finishing in 1973. Okay? 7 in a row. That's nuts. He has a chance to not only make history at UConn, which he's already done winning back-to-back national titles, but if he wins 3 in a row, which is a real possibility, and we're going to get into why here in a minute, if he wins 3 in a row, he won't be one of the greatest coaches ever, which he's kind of already on that, he's heading in that direction. If he wins a 3rd straight title, he will immediately be considered one of the best coaches ever, but he will also be immortal in the world of college basketball because he three-peated for the first time since 1973. He's going to do something that hasn't been done since John Wooden. And when you're mentioned in the same name as Coach Wooden, you are an immortal in the world of college basketball. And it's hard to turn that opportunity down. Okay, Hurley didn't take the Lakers job because it was in LA. He didn't take the Lakers job because he didn't think it was a good fit. Hurley didn't take the job because he's loaded at UConn with the chance to win 3 straight titles. Okay, and being great and being immortal are 2 different things. Okay, greatness is remembered temporarily. Like Charles Barkley was a great player. He wasn't immortal like Michael Jordan. Right? That's just kind of the way it works. Ken Griffey Jr. was a great player, but he's not immortal like Derek Jeter. Immortality lasts forever. Okay, greatness is Michael Jordan's first three-peat. Immortality is three-peating again after taking a year and a half off to go play baseball. Greatness is LeBron James winning 2 titles in Miami. But immortality came for LeBron James when he delivered the city of Cleveland their first title in over 50 years. Greatness is the Red Sox winning the World Series. Immortality is being the only team in the history of sports to come back from down 3-0 to win a series, which they did against the Yankees in 2004 in the ALCS. Yankees suck. And then they went on to win the World Series. Okay, there's a difference between being great and being immortal. And I don't blame Dan Hurley at all for passing on the Lakers job when he knows his roster is loaded this year and he has a chance at that immortality that I just spoke of. He legitimately has a chance to three-peat. A three-peat would make him immortal. He would be remembered forever in the history of coaching and in the history of college basketball. Once again, he'd be the first head coach since the great John Wooden to three-peat. And it's hard to turn that opportunity down, especially when you have the means to reach this improbable goal. Danny Hurley and UConn are bringing in 3 highly touted freshmen, headlined by former IU commit, a high school player that many of my listeners are familiar with, Liam McNeely, sharpshooter, 6'7". Hurley also has 2 top transfers coming in Aiden Mahanahy from St. Mary's and Terrace Reed Jr. from Michigan. Both were 4-star recruits coming out of high school. So there's talent. And Mahanahy, I believe that's how you say it, was twice all WCC. And Reed was the starting center for Michigan last year. So he's played tough basketball in a tough conference in the Big Ten. Okay, Reed averaged 9 points, 7 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks a game. So Hurley has talent coming in that he knows is going to be good and is going to contribute. And he has talent that stayed. He said before Alex Karaban even decided to return, Alex Karaban, member of both national title teams these last 2 seasons, before he decided to forego his draft eligibility and return to UConn, Danny Hurley said that this was the most talented group he's had at UConn. And now he's got a guy in Alex Karaban who's going to be a junior that is talented because he was an influential player on both of those title teams. He's coming back, plus just all the other talent that he already has. Now, talent doesn't always win, just ask John Calipari. But it's nice to have talent when you're trying to three-peat. It's nice to have talent when you're trying to win a title. One would say you had to have talent, in order to win anything. Okay, a chance to become immortal in the world of college basketball is hard to turn down. Okay, a sport that has a long, storied history. It's hard to turn that down, even if you have a lackluster group coming back. Okay, but if you have the most talented group you've had, though, like Dan Hurley currently does, it's near impossible to leave. Okay, UConn is going to pay you more money. You have a chance to win another title this year to make it a three-peat. And Danny Hurley's not that old. The NBA will come calling once again. And if he so chooses, he'll have an opportunity to fulfill that desire to coach in the NBA. Tom Thibodeau is not going to coach in New York for forever. It's not going to happen. He seems to naturally wear on people. That's what happened in Chicago. That's what happened in Minnesota. And eventually that will happen in New York. And when it happens, the New York Knicks would be stupid to not pick up the phone and at least interview Danny Hurley. Okay? Tough to leave something when you have an opportunity to become immortal, especially when you have the talent in order to do it in the world of sports, especially when the offer on the table isn't better than the situation that you're in. Because the situation in Los Angeles, not great. The future for the Lakers doesn't look great. LeBron James is likely going to opt out of his contract, opt out of his player option, and re-sign a new contract where he will be paid $60 million a year over the next 3 years. It's $180 million tied up in one guy. And that one guy will be 42 years old when his contract ends. I don't know about you. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I will willingly admit that. But if I was coaching any professional team and I was paying a 42-year-old a max contract, that would be a red flag. I would be like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't care if it's LeBron James or not. That had to be a concern for Danny Hurley. The Lakers also don't have the required pieces to rebuild after LeBron James leaves. They don't have any young talent that they can flip for a star, and they don't have that many draft picks. They have the 17th pick this year in what is an awful draft. Next year, 2025 draft is supposed to be awesome. Yeah, the Lakers don't have a first-round pick, and they don't have anything that they can trade to acquire a first-round pick next year. Their first-round pick in 2026 is they have that, and then their first-round pick in 2027 is top 4 protected, which basically means that unless it's a top 4 pick, the Lakers don't have a first-round selection. And then in 2028 and 2029, they have their first-round pick with no second-round picks. Then in 2030, they have their first and second-round picks. That's it. That is not a lot to work with. That is not a lot to rebuild with. On top of that, you have an old and getting older roster. If you watched the Lakers play last year, it was evident that they were old. LeBron is 40. He's almost done. And Anthony Davis is 31. So LeBron is out of his prime, and Anthony Davis is on the backside of his. On top of that, Anthony Davis is as reliable as a relief pitcher getting a base knock in the bottom of the 9th inning. There's a reason why they used to get pinch hit for in those spots, because it's not going to happen. You know, it's not going to end well. Okay, this previous season was the first time that Anthony Davis played in 70 games since he was 24 years old. 7 years. It's been 7 years since Anthony Davis has played in 70 games. Why would Danny Hurley leave the powerhouse that he has built to go to a franchise with two unreliable, aging stars and to a franchise that has a small amount of draft capital? Why would Danny Hurley leave that? It's also on the opposite side of the country that doesn't really fit him, does it? And I get that it's the Lakers, and the Lakers will always have a chance to hire whoever they want because they're the Los Angeles Lakers. But it's not like Danny Hurley's coaching Missouri. Okay, he's at a blue blood. He's in a state and he's on a campus and he's in a community that truly cares about his program. Status wise, I don't think it's that big of a leap. Plus, if he goes to the Lakers, he's going to be the bad guy the entire time that he's there, even if he wins a title. No one likes their head coach unless you win back-to-back national championships like Danny Hurley just did. And because of that, he has earned some grace with UConn fans, where if UConn underachieves this year, they aren't going to be calling for his job. They're going to be like, we won two titles in a row. Sometimes bad years happen. I think that would be I think that is what would happen in Stillwater, Connecticut, if UConn was to underachieve this year, which I don't think is going to happen, just because Danny Hurley's a great coach. He wouldn't have that extra rope with Laker fans. Coaching is a profession where you oftentimes are not liked and you are not appreciated, and every decision that you make is questioned. That's not happening to Danny Hurley right now in Connecticut, and that has to be nice. It has to be nice for Danny Hurley to actually be liked for a change. He's in a great spot, and he's going to have a chance in the future to make a leap to the NBA. There was no need for him to abandon this awesome, uber talented UConn roster to go to an NBA franchise that isn't in a great position to rebuild. He's doing the right thing, staying in Connecticut. Last thing here on the topic, I would just like to congratulate JJ Redick on being the new head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, speaking of the Lakers and the NBA, I've got a Top 10 Tuesday coming up here in about 4 minutes, focused on the NBA Finals. Stick around, coming right back with some Top 10 Tuesday here in about 4 minutes. What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, maybe you're listening on the glorious Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download at the App Store or the Google Play Store. That is a great place to stream the Dan Dockett Show, which follows my show from noon to 3. Maybe you're watching on Twitter. Follow us there at Ticket1430. That way you can watch the live stream on there. Or you can head over to YouTube, search for Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe there, watch the live stream, comment in the chat, do all those fun things. Last segment talked about Hurley staying at UConn. It's the right decision. Now I want to move to the NBA Finals, which continue tomorrow night at 8:30. Mavs fans, if there are people that bet on the Mavs, it's probably a more accurate thing. Don't worry. Mavs win tomorrow night. They'll be fine. Okay? Not too worried about it. But as I was doing prep and I was thinking about, what I wanted to talk about today, and I was thinking about the finals because I'm a Mavs fan, and I think about that stuff probably too much. It's fine. My goal is to not think about it today, as today is my wife's birthday. So happy birthday to her. And I got to Top 10 Tuesday, and I decided to do the most frustrated teams that are watching the finals. Okay, now usually Top 10 Tuesday has 10 things listed, but I couldn't get to 10, and I didn't want to talk for 3 minutes. And you just sit there and be like, this doesn't even make sense. So instead of 10, we're going to do 7. There are 7 teams that are frustrated watching the NBA Finals. They're sitting at home and they're boiling over some aspect of the NBA Finals. And at number 7, I have the San Antonio Spurs. Like, Jonathan, why do you have the San Antonio Spurs? Because the Spurs traded Derek White, who has been awesome for the Boston Celtics the entire time that he's been there. One of the best role players in basketball. He blocks more shots as a guard than anyone it's incredible. He's the best shot blocking guard since Dwayne Wade, maybe since Michael Jordan. I don't know, but he's one of the best that we've seen do this at the guard spot. And the Celtics basically traded away a paperclip. They didn't give up anything for him. The Spurs traded Derek White to the Celtics, and in return, they got a first-round pick, Josh Richardson. You don't know who you may know who that is, and Romeo Langford, a former IU grad. Okay, it looks like Brad Stevens and the Celtics absolutely fleeced the Spurs. They swindled Derek White away from them. Josh Richardson doesn't play for the Spurs anymore. Romeo Langford didn't appear in an NBA game this last year. Didn't appear in one. Believe he's out of the league. He might be in the G League, though. I'm not 100% sure on that. Either way, they give away this role player that's awesome and Derek White for 2 guys that aren't on their roster anymore. And the first round pick that they got from the Celtics ended up being Blake Wesley, who didn't play much for them this year. They gave Derek White away for nothing. Now, when we look at the Spurs, their roster is littered with players that don't understand how to fill their role. And for any role player, that is the most important thing. Do you know and do you understand what your role is? That's why Aaron Nesmith was awesome for the Pacers last year. He knew his role and he accepted it and he played that role to the best of his abilities. Right? And that's what Derek White does. And Derek White has bought into his role in Boston, and now he's about to win a title. And the Spurs would love to have a guy like Derek White right now. Because when you look at the Spurs roster, oh my gosh, it's awful. They don't have guys on their team that can make an entry pass. Derek White can do that and then some. So I know that the Spurs are sitting there, they're watching it, and it's just like, geez, we gave him away for way too little. Number 6, I have the Indiana Pacers. Anytime you get to the conference finals and you lose, it has to be frustrating to watch the finals. Because I think that there's something in everyone, especially athletes, where when you watch someone else play, it's just an immediate reaction to be like, oh, I'm better than them. Or when you play a team sport, we are better than them. And I feel like Halliburton and Siakam, if they're even watching the NBA Finals, I know some guys get away from it, but if they're watching it, I just know that they're sitting on their couches, sitting there, and they're just like, we could beat Dallas. We're better than Dallas. I know that they are. And, if the Pacers had been, blown out and swept, and I don't think that the feeling would be the same, but they have to feel like they are good enough to be in the finals because 2 out of those 4 losses were on them. They didn't close the door. So I've got them on the list, but the reason why I have them so low on the list is because I just think that there's no way that they would have beaten the Mavericks. Okay, they wouldn't have an answer for Luka or Kyrie. Those 2 players would have gotten going every game, and that would have cost the Pacers, so that's why I have them lower. Still, though, like it has to be frustrating to watch the finals at home when you lost 3 close games due to mistakes that you made. So Pacers, number 6. Number 5, the Washington Wizards. And you're probably like, Jonathan, why do you have the Washington Wizards, one of the worst teams in the league this year? Why do you have them on this list at all? This is going to be the 8th consecutive year that a former Washington Wizard is going to be on the team that won the title. It's locked in. It's happening this year. Kristaps Porzingis and Daniel Gafford, Porzingis obviously of the Celtics, Gafford of the Dallas Mavericks, both played on the Wizards this last year. And Gafford was their starting center this year until they traded him. Kristaps Porzingis was their starting center last year until they traded him. Okay, the Wizards have acquired so many good role players over these past several years, and they just can't find a star to build around. Like, that has to be incredibly frustrating. Okay, not having a star is the worst thing ever, but it's worse when it seems like you've been able to find role players good enough to be on championship level teams, right? Because I think that, the stat of a former wizard has won 8 straight titles for a different team, obviously. I think that's crazy. Like, to be able to find that much talent in the margins, but not be able to find a star. It's brutal. Absolutely brutal, and that has to be frustrating. Number 4, the New York Knicks. Injuries suck. Does. Losing happens, and professional athletes have to be good at moving on after they lose. But it's hard to move on when there are a bunch of what ifs. For the Knicks, there are plenty of what ifs. Like, what if Julius Randle didn't get hurt? What if OG Anunoby hadn't gotten hurt? What if the Pacers didn't shoot 67% from the floor in Game 7? What if Jalen Brunson didn't break his hand? I know that happened later, but still. There are plenty of what ifs for the Knicks. And I got up really early this morning to go and play some pickleball. So excuse that yawn there. My bad. Back to the Knicks. There are plenty of what ifs for the Knicks, and I'm sure that they feel that they would have beaten the Pacers in less than 7 games if they'd been fully healthy. Then they would have had their shot at the Celtics. So for the Knicks, I know that's frustrating. I have them at number 4 as we continue this Top 10 Tuesday. That's not really Top 10 Tuesday because there's only 7 teams, but it's fine. Number 3, the Milwaukee Bucks. I laugh. I can't stand the Bucks. I don't know what's happened to me. I used to be a Giannis Antetokounmpo defender, still am to a certain extent, but I can't stand them. I don't know why. They traded Drew Holiday this offseason so they could acquire Damian Lillard. The entire point of moving Drew Holiday and bringing in Damian Lillard was to make them better than the Boston Celtics. And now they're sitting there and they're watching the finals, and Drew Holiday might win finals MVP for the team that they thought this trade would make them better than. But no, the Bucks made this trade and it made Boston better. Okay? Like watching these finals, I'm sure that the Bucks are realizing that Drew Holiday is a better player than Damian Lillard. And that has to sting. You trade away multiple assets to get a player that isn't as good as the one that you traded away. It's kind of funny. I don't feel bad for Milwaukee at all. This happens to greedy teams sometimes. You take a risk, which is required. That's something that you should do in sports. I wish Chris Ballard and the Colts would take more risk. But sometimes you take a risk and it sets you back. And that's what happened to Milwaukee. Now they have to watch Drew Holiday. a guy not deemed good enough by the Celtics potentially be the finals MVP. I don't feel bad for him one bit. Jeez. Because even if Milwaukee had been healthy, they weren't going to beat Boston. Okay, they may have beaten the Pacers in the first round. I don't know if they would have done that, but they weren't going to beat Boston. Number 2, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves on my list of the most frustrated teams that are watching the NBA Finals. Number 2 is Minnesota. I bet they feel incredibly dumb watching this series. Okay, this was arguably the best defensive team in the NBA this year. And they did everything they could to stop Luka and Kyrie, and they couldn't stop them. And the role players for the Mavericks scored a whole bunch because they put so much energy and effort into stopping Luka and Kyrie. That's what did them in. And I'm sure that after watching these 2 games, the Timberwolves are sitting there and they're like, geez, how do we not think that? Okay, if the Timberwolves could, they would go back and they would defend Dallas entirely differently. They would do exactly what the Celtics are doing. They would shut off everyone else, let Kyrie and Luka try to do everything themselves like they're doing against Boston. And, while you do that, you don't let PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr., Derek Lively, or Daniel Gafford score, right? And I think that part of this was youth, right? Because the Minnesota Timberwolves are just a young team. Like their best player's 22 years old. Okay, their head coach never coached in the Western Conference Finals before. He also had a torn patella tendon. Their best coach sat on like the 3rd row of the bench, which makes things a little bit tougher. So we'll see what they do. Some offseason moves could be coming for Minnesota. We'll see if they end up moving Karl Anthony Towns. That was the storyline heading into the season, and we'll see what they do going forward. Anthony Edwards seems to like Towns though. So, and that obviously matters. So we'll see what they wind up doing. Number 1, though, has to be the Denver Nuggets. Okay. Nikola Jokic comes off very relaxed. Okay. Like just seems like he doesn't care. Seems like he just wants to go pet his horses and do those things. But he's clearly competitive. He is. Okay. And it just has to sting that the Nuggets had a 20-point lead in Game 7 at home against Minnesota, and they blew it. And they lost the series because of it. Like they would have beaten Dallas. Dallas would have had no answer for Jokic. I think that they would have been fine defending Jamal Murray, but they would have had no answer for Jokic whatsoever. And they also match up so much better with Boston than Dallas does because Boston, once again, would not have had any sort of answer for Jokic. And so they have to be sitting at home with this sense of very similar to how I feel like the Pacers think that they could beat Dallas in a 7-game series. Denver is sitting at home with this exact same idea, this exact same sense of we would have beaten Dallas and we 1,000% could beat these Boston Celtics. Like that has to be a feeling and a thought that is running through their head. They got cold late. They didn't make shots at the end of the game. And that's the way that it goes sometimes. Basketball, it's a make or miss league. It's a make or miss game. If you make shots, you win. You miss shots, you lose. And Denver missed too many shots down the stretch. Michael Porter Jr. wasn't very good in that series. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope wasn't very good in that series. The role players just didn't shoot the ball well. Pretty similar to Dallas. Very, very similar to Dallas. Right. And what's happening to them against Boston? Because, if you remember that series properly, Minnesota made things really tough on Jamal Murray and they shut down the other guys and Jokic kind of did his thing. And that's what Boston's doing to Dallas right now as well. So that's my list of the most frustrated teams / players. It's really just teams. I don't think I have a single player on here. The most frustrated teams that are sitting at home watching the NBA Finals. That's the list. I'm sure I will circle back to it at some point later on in the show. I got to talk about the Fever, though, because they got crushed last night, and there are some things there that need to be addressed. The Fever getting crushed by the Connecticut Sun last night. I'm talking about that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Hope you're having a great day. Dan Hurley staying in UConn, going to get a fat raise because of it. That is coming. Talked about the most frustrated teams watching the NBA Finals on Top 10 Tuesday. And now I have to talk about the Indiana Fever and they just got absolutely thumped last night by the Connecticut Sun. They lost by 17. They gave up 89 points. That's a lot. That's a lot. The defensive effort wasn't very good last night, and that's why they lost by as many as they did. Okay, the Connecticut Sun are now responsible for 3 of the Fever's 10 losses this season. Also, the Fever have not beaten the Connecticut Sun since July 3rd of 2021. Okay, the Sun became the second team in the WNBA this season to reach 10 wins, and the Fever are now the second team in the WNBA to lose 10 games this season. Now, let's get to the person that everyone wants to hear about, the person that people love, Caitlin Clark, the person that people just can't seem to get enough of. Caitlin Clark finished with her 4th fewest points in a game this season. She finished with 10, 3 of 8 from the field. Not great. All those points came in the first half. Okay, about halfway through the third quarter, she picked up her 3rd foul. It did not play at all in the 4th quarter. Okay, the defense was bad. Christy Sides pulled several of the starters because the energy on defense just wasn't very good, and you aren't going to beat anybody at any level if you don't play any defense whatsoever. And Christy Sides had a short comment on it. She was like, the defensive energy was down. Like you weren't going to beat anybody when that happens. And Caitlin Clark was asked after the game about the defensive energy throughout it. Here's what Fever star and face of the WNBA had to say about the energy on the defensive side of the ball.
Coach and coach team was talking about just not being pleased with the effort, I guess, all around from the team. What was her message to you all in terms of that?
Yeah, I think it's just like we can't coach effort. This is a team you can't come out and be lackadaisical against. Like they're just that good. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and I don't think we had it from the jump. And obviously that's a little disappointing. But that's something they can't coach. Effort is not something they can coach. They can coach X and O's, but they can't coach that. And I thought we just could have played with a lot better energy. I thought we let little things on the offensive end frustrate us, and we didn't play good defense. It seemed like everything they got was easy. Nothing was challenged. Uncontested threes. We were giving up and ones. We put them at the free throw line, and that was the key to the game. Like, you can't foul this team. They lead the league in free throws attempted, I'm pretty sure. And that's exactly what we did. It's not a recipe to win many games.
That was Caitlin Clark talking about the lack of defensive energy that her and her Fever teammates showed last night against the Connecticut Sun. I mean, it was just obvious. First of all, you give up 89 points. That can't happen. You allow your opponent to shoot 47% from 3. That can't happen. You put your opponent on the line 24 times, of which they go 21 of 24. That can't happen. Okay, you get out rebounded by 15. You give up 12 offensive rebounds. Like, all of the effort stats point to the Connecticut Sun. The only thing that the Fever did a good job of last night, they only turned the ball over 11 times. Caitlin Clark only had 3 turnovers. That is much improved upon, compared to her previous outings. They also turned the Sun over 12 times and scored 18 points off of those turnovers. Still, though, the effort stats, not there. And let's just be frank. Once again, I am Indianapolis's honesty broker. I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay? The Indiana Fever, something we all know, aren't as talented as the Connecticut Sun. And they won't be for the next couple of years because Aaliyah Boston has to mature and get better. She was a bright spot. 14 points, 12 rebounds, double-double. That's good. That's impressive. But Clark, trying to get better, right? I think there have been some highs, there have been some lows, which is to be expected from a rookie, up and down. And Kelsey Mitchell, it's her 3rd year in the league. She's still getting better. There's some development that has to happen on this Fever roster before they're going to be able to compete with and beat teams like the Connecticut Sun. So when you play teams that are more talented than you, you have to find other ways to win, and that is usually through effort. That is grabbing all the loose balls. That's grabbing extra rebounds. That's working harder on defense. Like, that's how you beat teams that are more talented than you are. And, I'm not going to play the Christy Sides comment on the lack of effort from last night, but if you watch the game, it was pretty evident that the Fever were just out there trying to play offense. And that's a frustrating thing. Okay? Like, you have to play with more energy and effort. And that's the one thing that you can control. Okay? Like you aren't going to control, every shot that you make, right? Because if you could, then nobody would ever miss. And basketball would be so much more fun, right? But you can control whether or not you dive on the floor for loose balls. You can control whether or not you box out. You can control whether or not you get in a stance and work your butt off and try to play defense. Like, you can control all of those things, and those things usually result in winning. If you have a unit, a full collective team doing those small things, then you can win games. Okay? Now, back to Caitlin Clark. She continues to be the face of the league. The fact that she was not put on the Olympic team, while it is not something super upsetting to me, it should have happened because people love this woman. Fans in Connecticut began chanting midway through the fourth quarter, "We want Caitlin. We want Caitlin." Fans on the road chanting for Caitlin Clark to get into the game. Okay, this is full proof that Caitlin Clark is the reason why people are watching the WNBA. Okay, I can tell you right now, Angel Reese, the Chicago Sky, they're coming here on Sunday. Nobody is going to chant, "We want Angel Reese." I bet that doesn't happen all year. It definitely won't happen on the road. It probably won't even happen at home. Okay, and part of me feels bad for these Sun fans because, they show up to watch Caitlin Clark play. She didn't play much. She only played 22 minutes. She was a team low -30, which is pitiful, right? And like, in those 22 minutes, it was just a bad 22 minutes of basketball. And that's not fun for her. It's not fun for the fans watching, but it's not unexpected either. It's just part of being a rookie. You're going to go through ups and downs. And I got to be honest, as disappointing as it is to watch the lack of defensive effort from this Fever team, it's not surprising. Okay? Watch any young NBA team. Do you know what they don't do? They don't play defense. They don't. Okay? Most young teams don't play defense, and that's what this Indiana Fever team has. They have a young team filled with girls that are still just trying to figure things out. And, does that make it okay? No. But this isn't a new thing. Okay? Young teams tend to not play defense, and young teams tend to not produce on the road. Like, I never expect for rookies to produce on the road. That's why it's not surprising that Caitlin Clark struggled last night. Okay, especially when you're playing against one of the best teams in the league. Okay, once again, if you want to find a positive from this Fever game last night, Clark only turned the basketball over 3 times. That is a big improvement for her. Okay, I know that she didn't play a ton, but turnovers have kind of plagued her season and have made the great nights only good, if that makes sense. For example, when they beat the Mystics and Clark scored 30 points and was 7 of 13 from 3 and had 8 rebounds and 6 assists, that sounds like a great night until you hear that she had 8 turnovers in that game. So limiting the turnovers for Caitlin Clark, especially against a good, physical, defensive-oriented Sun team, like, that is impressive. And Aaliyah Boston's got to show up at some point. I think it's good. She grabbed her second double-double of the night last night, 14 points, 12 rebounds. If the Fever want to make the playoffs, if they want to be, one of the top 8 teams in the league, then Aaliyah Boston has got to show up and she has to play well. And here's the thing. The most important thing about last night, the Fever were not supposed to win this game. Last week, I said that better times could be coming for the Indiana Fever. They are 2 games into this 9-game stretch to close out the month of June with a lot of winnable games. Last night was not one of them. Okay? They're 2 games into it. They're 1-1. They beat the Washington Mystic, which is a game that they were supposed to win, and they lost to the Connecticut Sun last night, a game that they were supposed to lose. They're 1-1 during this 9-game stretch where they could win some games, and Caitlin Clark could really jump off the screen like she did at Iowa. The next tough game in this relatively easy 9-game stretch comes on June 27th when they play the Seattle Storm. Outside of that, they got a lot of winnable games. Their next game is on Thursday. They'll play the Atlanta Dream, who are 5-4. Okay, the Dream aren't the best team in the league. They're not the worst team in the league. They're pretty average. Right, this should be a pretty good litmus test as to where the Indiana Fever are actually at in terms of the better teams in the WNBA. Right, because let's just be honest here. The Fever Sun has been anything. The Fever's schedule has been anything but easy. Okay, a quarter of their games have come against the Connecticut Sun, in which they've lost 3 of them. They've played the Las Vegas Aces a couple times. They played the Seattle Storm. Those are tough teams. And so Thursday, they get I wouldn't call it a break game, but they get a much easier game against the Atlanta Dream, who are 5-4. And then on Sunday, it happens. I might go to this game. I'm still up in the air on it. Sunday at noon, the Indiana Fever play the Chicago Sky. That is Angel Reese. That is the weird chick that hip checked Caitlin Clark. Can't wait for the game. It is appointment television for me. And I want to be there because I know that everyone is going to boo the living crap out of Angel Reese. And the girl who hip checked Caitlin Clark earlier in the year, she's going to get booed as well. Can't wait for it. Can't wait. I'm going to sit at home. My wife, whose birthday is today, happy birthday, Amelia. My wife and I, we're going to get home. She'll be like, Jonathan, what do you want to do? Let's clean the house. Let's meal prep for the week. Let's do all these important things. And I'm going to be like, honey, I love you, but no. I'm sorry, but Caitlin Clark plays at noon. So, we can work on all that. But as soon as noon rolls around, I'm sitting down on our lovely couch and I'm watching that game. Okay. I am so excited for Sunday when the Fever play the Chicago Sky, because on-court drama, I'm here for it. Give me all of the on-court drama. Give me Bulls, Pistons, and the Jordan rules. Give me stuff like that. I'm here for that. That is interesting. That is entertaining. That gets me to a TV screen. But don't give me the off-court drama. Don't want that. I have no desire for that to be in my life. So on-court drama, great thing. I think we're going to get a lot of it on Sunday, but just leave it on the court. Leave it on the court. That wraps up a great first hour of the Real Jonathan Smith Show. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, I'm going to get into Dan Hurley staying at UConn. I like my thoughts on this one. It's good. Stick around for him.
Febreze. So my home is also my office. And before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up and spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la. Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to ziprecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ziprecruiter.com/free.
People join Walk MS to raise awareness and funds that change the world for everyone affected by multiple sclerosis. MS attacks the brain and spinal cord. It's the most common neurological disease leading to disability in young adults. Walk MS brings communities together, creating teams with friends, loved ones, and coworkers to rally around those we care about and end MS forever. Join us. Together we are stronger. Walk MS fundraising accelerates research breakthroughs and life-changing breakthroughs. It will take all of our passion, determination, and fundraising to end MS forever. Together, we can change the world for people with MS. Join us. Register today, start a team, and raise funds at walkms.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Thank you for tuning in. The Dan Docker Show coming up next. You see me looking at my phone. I'm grabbing some last-minute guests for Dan's show today. So, yeah, if you want to know who they are, tune in from noon to 3. Can't wait to get into it. Dan's show is usually just an absolute blast. Yeah, can't wait for that later on today. That is once again from noon to 3 right here on Indy's Sports Ticket. You can live stream it on the Indy Sports Ticket app. Don't forget to head over to YouTube and subscribe to Indy Sports Ticket there so you can watch the live stream. Enjoy the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful chat that we have going on over on the YouTube channel. Something else that's wonderful is Danny Hurley staying at UConn? I say that, but if he beats the Arkansas Razorbacks at some point this year, I'm not going to be too happy about it. I'm going to be like, he should have gone and played for, or he should have gone and coached for the Lakers. So Danny Hurley staying at UConn turned down a 6-year, $70 million offer, which seems insane. Okay, never thought that. That's absurd to me. That's a lot of money to just be like, nah, I'm good. Yeah, insane. Rob Dibble, said on the Dan Dockett show last week that UConn was going to offer him a new contract. ESPN reported the same thing this morning on one of their shows. They're going to offer him a contract that rivals Bill Self's contract, who's the highest paid coach in college basketball. So the raise that he's going to receive from UConn should likely rival what the Lakers offered him, which was around $11.5 million a year. Here's the thing with Hurley. He is going to make the leap to the NBA at some point. Okay, he said before that he would love to coach the Knicks. That means he is interested in the NBA. And I think that most college coaches would want to coach at the NBA level. Okay, the pay tends to be better. You actually get a vacation. You're dealing with full-grown adults and not kids. Okay, there are just things that the NBA offers that the college game does not. It's just the way that it is. It's also the best league in the world. And what competitor, I don't know an athlete or any competitive person at all that doesn't want to say that they once competed at the highest level in the world. These coaches are competitive. They have egos. And most, not all, most coaches want to compete at the highest level. They want to compete in the toughest league. Okay, and Danny Hurley is as intense and as competitive as anyone that you'll find in college basketball, college football, the NFL, the Premier League in Europe. Okay, he's as intense and competitive as a guy as you're going to find. And at some point, he's going to leave for the NBA. It's going to happen. Okay, once again, he has expressed interest in wanting to coach the New York Knicks. He's going to leave for the NBA at some point. Okay, because Tom Thibodeau is not going to be the head coach of the New York Knicks forever. It's not going to happen. But Danny Hurley doesn't need to leave for the Lakers job. Even though the NBA is going to happen at some point in his career, he doesn't need to leave for the Lakers job because the Lakers job is a good job. It is. Okay, I know, people want to look at this and be like, oh, he doesn't want to coach LeBron, or oh, he doesn't want to coach Anthony Davis, or and stuff like that, which is, that might be true. I don't know. The Lakers job is a good job, and it will always be a good job because it attracts more stars than any other franchise. People want to play for the Lakers, but it's not a great job. It's a good job. It's not a great job. UConn is a great job. Okay, Danny Hurley has built that program into what he wants it to be. And that's a hard thing to walk away from. Okay, Danny Hurley's been there for 4 or 5 years now. It's hard to put 4 or 5 years worth of efforts and just it's a year-round thing too. It's 4 or 5 years worth of constant work to turn UConn into what Danny Hurley wants it to be. And once you get it to that point, it's hard to walk away from. One day, though, I think he will. One day he will walk away from UConn. Okay? But as of right now, I think he's doing the right thing in staying. He doesn't feel like the Lakers head coach. Okay, he feels like the next coach of the Detroit Pistons or the New York Knicks or the Boston Celtics or the Memphis Grizzlies. Okay, those are 4 franchises with a history of toughness. And that's where Dan Hurley needs to be. Dan Hurley needs to be at a franchise that embodies part of who he is. And that is tough. Danny Hurley needs to be at a tough, intense franchise, not a flashy one. Not a flashy, laid-back Louis Vuitton bag one like the Los Angeles Lakers are. Okay, let's just be really honest. Of the 2 names that have been associated with the Lakers head coaching job the most, J.J. Redick, Danny Hurley. J.J. Redick feels a lot more L.A. than Danny Hurley does. Okay, and if you're Danny Hurley, I think it's easy to turn down a good job when you already have a great one. It's even easier when you have a good chance at three-peating. In a sport where a three-peat hasn't happened since UCLA did it in 1973, which was their 7th championship in a row. He has a chance to not only make history at UConn, but to be an immortal figure in the history of college basketball. And that is hard to turn down. Okay, Danny Hurley didn't take the Lakers job because he has an opportunity to win 3 straight titles because he's absolutely loaded at UConn, right? And if he were to leave UConn today, he would go down as a great head coach in the history of college basketball. Okay, like the guy put together back-to-back 2 of the most dominant March Madness runs we have ever seen. He would be remembered as a great basketball coach. But if he three-peats, he will be immortal. Now, greatness and immortality, 2 completely different things. Okay, greatness is remembered temporarily and brought up from time to time. Charles Barkley was a great basketball player, but we don't talk about him like Michael Jordan. Ken Griffey Jr. was a great baseball player, but we don't talk about him like he's Derek Jeter. Okay, because greatness is remembered temporarily, but immortality lasts forever. Greatness is Michael Jordan's first three-peat. Immortality is three-peating again after taking a year and a half off to go play baseball for the White Sox. Okay, greatness is LeBron James winning 2 NBA titles in Miami with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and he really revolutionized the way that free agency in the NBA works. That is greatness. But immortality came when LeBron James decided to go home and he delivered the city of Cleveland its first title in over 50 years. Greatness is the Red Sox winning the World Series. Immortality is coming back from down 3-0 to beat the Yankees in the ALCS, then going on to win the World Series. Okay, there is a difference between being great and being immortal. And I don't blame Dan Hurley in the slightest for passing on the Lakers job when he knows that his roster is loaded and that he legitimately has a chance at immortality. He legitimately has a chance to three-peat. And that three-peat, man, it make him immortal. He'd be the first head coach since John Wooden to do it, which is incredible. If you are mentioned in the same sentence as John Wooden in any sort of coaching thing, like that is incredible. And it's hard to turn that opportunity down, especially when you have the means to reach this improbable goal, when you have the talent and the players to potentially three-peat, especially in this age of college basketball where players are transferring all over the place and freshmen that are great are one and done. And the fact that anybody can three-peat, like the fact that this is even a possibility, speaks to what Dan Hurley has built there. And it's, once again, it's hard to walk away from that. And the talent that he has this year makes it even harder to walk away from. He's bringing in 3 highly touted freshmen, headlined by former IU commit Liam McNeely, okay, which I know many of the IU fans out there are indeed familiar with. Okay, Hurley also has 2 top transfers coming in, Aiden Mahoney from St. Mary's, and Terrace Reed Jr., starting center at Michigan, is also transferring in. Okay, they were both 4-star recruits coming out of high school, so we know that there is a base talent level there. These guys aren't late bloomers. Okay, the WCC where Mahaney is coming from, like that's a good conference. Okay, Terrace Reed Jr. played in the Big Ten at Michigan. That is also obviously a good conference. Okay, Mahaney was twice all WCC. Terrace Reed, once again, starting center at Michigan last year, averaged 9 and 7 with 1.5 blocks a game. Hurley has talent coming in. Okay, if that UConn roster was barren and it was a bunch of dudes that look like me, he would pass. He would have left for the Laker job, I promise you. But he's got talent coming in, and he has talent that stayed. Okay, he said before Alex Karaban, a guy who has contributed to the last 2 national titles that UConn has won, he said before Alex Karaban decided to not enter the NBA draft, Danny Hurley came out and said that this was his most talented group at UConn. And now he's got an important player from these last 2 title teams returning back. Okay? Look, like when you have this much talent, like I don't know how you leave. Okay, and obviously, talent doesn't always win. Just ask John Calipari. But it's nice to have talent when you're trying to win a title. And Danny Hurley has no shortage of that. Okay, a chance to become an immortal college basketball coach is hard. It's hard to turn down. Even if you have a lackluster group coming back. Okay, if you have the most talented group you've ever had, though, that's got to make it impossible to leave, especially when the offer on the table isn't better than the situation that you're in terms of money and in terms of just the way and in terms of just the situation that you're in. Because the Lakers' future doesn't look great. It's not great. Okay, LeBron James is likely going to opt out of the last year of his deal. And if that happens, he's going to ask for a max contract. And Lakers are going to give it to him because they're the Lakers, and the Lakers pride themselves on the way that they treat stars. Right? That's what they do. They're like, stars want to come play for us because we treat them better than any other franchise, which means that LeBron James is likely going to be given a max contract where he will make $60 million a year over the next 3 years. That means that the Los Angeles Lakers will be paying a 42-year-old $60 million to play basketball. That's absurd. That shouldn't happen. I don't know about you, but if I was coaching any team, any professional sports team, and I was paying a 42-year-old a max contract, that would be a red flag. That would be an immediate, I don't want this job. And I don't care that it's LeBron James. Okay? That had to be a concern for Danny Hurley. The Lakers also don't have the required pieces to rebuild. They don't. They don't have any young talent that they can flip for a star. They don't have any young talent that they can flip for draft picks. Oh, and they don't have draft picks. They have the 17th pick this year and the worst draft we've seen since the Anthony Bennett draft a decade ago. They don't have any picks in the 2025 draft, which is supposed to be an awesome draft class. They have their first-round pick in 2026. In 2027, their first-round pick is top 4 protected. So basically, unless the Lakers have a top 4 pick in 2027, they will not have a draft pick. In 2028 and 2029, they have their first-round draft picks with no second-round picks. And then in 2030, they finally have both their first and second-round picks. That isn't a lot to work with. It's not. And this Lakers roster is old and it's aging. LeBron is 40, so he's almost done. And Anthony Davis is 31. LeBron James has been out of his prime for the past 7 years. Okay, he's still been good, but he's not peak LeBron James. He's not. He's out of his prime. And Anthony Davis is on the backside of his. So eventually, if Danny Hurley was to take that job, whoever takes that job next, they're going to coach 40-year-old LeBron James for like 3 years, and then he's going to retire. And then it's going to be all on Anthony Davis, 34-year-old Anthony Davis. And look, Anthony Davis staying healthy is about as reliable as a relief pitcher getting a base knock with the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth. In other words, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Anthony Davis played 76 games this year to his credit, but that's the first time since he was 24 years old that he played 70 games in a season. It's been 7 years. 7 years of injuries and not playing in games. Why would Danny Hurley, with a chance to three-peat, want to leave this powerhouse that he built to go to a franchise with 2 unreliable and aging stars and a franchise that has very small amounts of draft capital? I get that it's the Lakers and that is the mecca of college of basketball jobs, being their head coach. But he's coaching out of blue blood right now. I just don't think that it's that big of a leap status-wise, going from being the head coach at UConn to being the head coach of the Lakers. Plus, if he goes to the Lakers, he doesn't win. Okay, if he goes to the Lakers, he will be the bad guy until he wins a title. And if he doesn't repeat, then he'll be the bad guy again. Okay, no one likes their head coach. It's just a fact. No one likes their head coach. Unless you win back-to-back championships, like Danny Hurley just did. Because of that, he has earned some grace. He has earned some respect. He has earned some trust with the UConn fans. Like, if UConn was to underachieve this year, and get bounced in the Sweet 16, UConn fans would be like, geez, that stinks. We were really talented. But hey, Danny Hurley won back-to-back national titles before this year. I think we're going to be okay. That would be the reaction. He wouldn't have that length of rope with Laker fans. Okay, coaching is a profession where you oftentimes are not liked, no matter where you're at. Whether you're in Storrs, Connecticut, or Los Angeles coaching the Lakers. Okay, and it's got to be nice for Danny Hurley to be liked for a change. It does. Okay, he's in a great spot, and he's going to have a chance in the future to make that leap to the NBA. Because once again, Tom Thibodeau is not going to be the head coach of the New York Knicks for forever. They will fire him at some point, just like he was fired in Chicago and he was fired in Minnesota. Okay, there was no need for Danny Hurley to leave UConn and this talented team that he has brought in. There was no need for him to leave them to go and coach the Los Angeles Lakers. Last thing on this before I wrap up, congratulations to JJ Redick on being the Lakers' new head coach. I think we all know that that's where this is now headed. Coming up here in about 4 minutes, Top 10 Tuesday, getting into that, the most frustrated teams that are watching the NBA Finals. Fun list. I hope you enjoy it. I'm giving that to you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin ultra soft on the party, less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. Our crib is always stocked. It's our party vibes. Everybody wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? Time for an oil change? Right now, you can save on Valvoline Restore and Protect, the only oil that restores and protects your engine to like factory clean. You can also save on brakes, tools, and more during the Father's Day sale with dad-approved deals through June 16th. AutoZone Father's Day sale, now through the 16th.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
This is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app. Your home for the Dan Dockage Show. Weekdays from noon to 3. Presented by Moondrops Distillery. This is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. I know I am. Today's my wife's birthday. We got plans tonight. Went out to Big Woods last night with the in-laws. Had a fantastic time. And then I went home. I did some prep. My mom called me. She was like, Jonathan, we going to run this 50K or what? And I was like, let me call some people. Called my brother. I was like, dude, you got to run this thing with us because I don't want to run it by myself. And he was like, I can't. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so, yeah, still trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to run a 50K. Probably not, but we'll see if that ends up happening or not. But Top 10 Tuesday. That's why you're tuned in. That's why you want to listen. So usually Top 10 Tuesday is 10 things. It's a top 10 list. Here's 10 things. But the topic that I chose, I couldn't get to 10. And I don't want to waste your time. I didn't want to do 10, 9, and 8. And you'd be like, Jonathan, these are you're really stretching here. I didn't want to do that. And so today's Top 10 Tuesday, there's only 7 things. And my topic is the most frustrated teams that are at home watching this NBA Finals. That's my topic. Let's jump into it. Starting at number 7, because only 7 this time instead of 10. The San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs are sitting at home, and they're frustrated. Jonathan, why are the San Antonio Spurs frustrated? Because they traded Derek White for a paperclip that they lost, and they no longer have. Derek White was traded to the Boston Celtics from the San Antonio Spurs. For compensation, the Spurs received a first-round pick, Josh Richardson, and former IU player Romeo Langford. It looks like Brad Stevens and the Boston Celtics absolutely fleeced the Spurs. Absolutely fleeced them. Okay, they swindled Derek White away. Josh Richardson doesn't play for the Spurs anymore. Doesn't. And Romeo Langford didn't appear in an NBA game for anybody this year. Now, he might be in the G League. I don't know, but he's not playing right now, or he didn't play at all this year. And the first round pick that the Spurs got, in addition to Romeo Langford and Josh Richardson, the first round pick they got was used on Blake Wesley from Notre Dame, who didn't play much for them this year, to put it nicely. So they gave Derek White away basically for free. Wasn't worth it at all. And now, when we look at the San Antonio Spurs roster, it is littered with players that don't know how to fill their role. While Derek White has bought into his role in Boston, and because of that, he's about to win a title. Okay, the Spurs would love, all caps, love to have Derek White right now. And they surely regret that trade. There's no way that the Spurs can sit here and look back on that trade and be like, geez, I'm so glad that we got rid of Derek White so we could bring in Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, and Blake Wesley or Wellesley or Wesley, excuse me. It's funny. Like they gave him away for nothing. And it just goes to show, like, you can find good players everywhere. And if you're the Spurs, you're sitting there and you're looking at your roster and like, we don't have anybody that could make an entry pass. Maybe we should have kept Derek White. So Spurs at number 7. Number 6, I've got the Pacers. Anytime you get to the conference finals and you lose, it has to be frustrating to watch the finals, especially when you lose three close games that you probably should have won. If the Pacers had been blown out and swept, they probably feel differently. They're probably like, we're 1 or 2 years away, all that kind of stuff. But they have to feel like they're good enough to be in the finals. They have to feel that way. And they're probably sitting there and they're watching Dallas and they're like, Luka can't defend. We'd have just attacked him and like they wouldn't have been able to stop us. And, we could be up 2-0 on the Mavs right now. Like that has to at least be a thought in some of these Pacer players' minds. right? Because I think that as an athlete and that as a competitor, you just automatically assume that you can and will beat whoever's put in front of you. And so the reason why I have the Pacers so low on this list is because I disagree with them on that. Like, there's no way that the Pacers would have beaten the Mavericks. They wouldn't have had any answers for Luka or Kyrie. Those two guys, like when they both get going, it's tough sledding, and they would have gotten going every game because this Pacers team defensively just isn't very good, and that's ultimately what would have costed the Pacers if they had gotten past the Celtics. Still, though, it has to be frustrating to sit at home and watch the finals when you lose 3 close games due to mistakes that you made. It's tough. It's not easy. Number 5, the Washington Wizards. This is going to be the 8th straight year, 8 consecutive years that a former Wizard is going to be on the team that won the title. Porzingis and Gafford both played for the Wizards this year. They did. Or, excuse me, last year. And then Gafford played for the Wizards this year. He was their starting center until the trade deadline when they traded him. Okay, the Wizards over the years have acquired so many good role players. They just can't seem to find a star to build around, which has just got to be the most frustrating thing ever. They had Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal was like, I just want to get paid to sit here and watch all these games. And then the Wizards were like, okay, here you go. Here's a lot of money to do that. And then he was like, I would like to be traded to Phoenix. And the Wizards were like, okay. And yeah, it was not great. It was rough. So that has to be incredibly frustrating for the Wizards. You know, not having a star, it's the worst thing ever. But it's worse when it seems like you've been able to find role players good enough to be on championship level teams over and over and over again. Very similar to the Colts during the Chris Ballard days, where it felt like, you know, they had enough everywhere else except for the quarterback spot. So, yeah, Wizards at 5. Number 4, the New York Knicks. I have them at 4 because injuries suck. You know, losing happens, and professional athletes are better than anyone at losing and then moving on after a loss, even if it's like a tough loss. But it's harder to move on when there are a bunch of what ifs. And for the Knicks, there are plenty of what ifs. What if Julius Randle didn't get hurt? What if OG Anunoby hadn't gotten hurt? What if Jalen Brunson didn't break his hand? What if the Pacers didn't shoot 67% from the floor in Game 7? Okay, like there are plenty of what ifs for the Knicks. And I'm sure that they feel that they would have beaten the Pacers if they had been healthy. They weren't, so they didn't, and injuries are part of the season. So I'm not making excuses for the Knicks, but, you know, like that has to be a question for them. And, you know, obviously if they beat the Pacers, they then have their shot at Boston. And who knows what happens in that series, because the Knicks are a pain in the butt to play. So I've got the Knicks at 4. Number 3. This is my favorite team to talk about because I don't like this team. I used to. I don't know what happened. I got into sports radio, and then I was just like, you know what? I can't stand the Milwaukee Bucks. Even though I do like Giannis, and he's a great player. But I can't stand the Bucks. And I think it started this offseason when they traded Drew Holiday so they could acquire Damian Lillard. The whole point of the trade was to make the Bucks better than the Celtics. That is why they moved Drew Holiday and they brought in Damian Lillard. And Drew Holiday might win Finals MVP for the team that they thought that this trade would make them better than. Seriously, which I think is hilarious, and it made the Bucks worse and it made the Celtics better. Like if the Celtics didn't have Drew Holiday, they would be so much worse. But they've got this perfect role player that just does everything right. You know, and I know that the Bucks, you know, their front office and the players and Giannis and Doc Rivers and these guys, like, I just know that they're sitting at home and they're watching this series and they're like, geez, like Drew Holiday's better than Damian Lillard, because he is. And, you know, that's probably not the most popular opinion in the world, but he is. He's a better defender. He's very capable on offense. If you don't believe me, just go back and watch Game 2. He scored 26 points just because he knows where to be. Drew Holiday's better than Damian Lillard. And I just think it's hilarious that the Bucks were in such a rush to get rid of him and bring in a dynamic scoring guard like Damian Lillard. And like that has to sting. You trade away multiple assets to get a player that isn't as good as the one that you traded away. It's kind of funny. And I don't feel bad for Milwaukee at all. And in some ways, I actually have respect for Milwaukee for making this trade, because you have to get greedy sometimes. You have to take risks if you want to win championships. This has been, in my short time doing radio here in Indianapolis, this has been my complaint about the Colts. They don't take enough risks. And, I have all the respect in the world for Milwaukee for making this risk. But sometimes you swing and you strike out, and it sets you back. And that's what's happened to Milwaukee. That's what happened to them this last year, at least. And now they have to watch Drew Holiday, a guy deemed not good enough, potentially be the finals MVP, because that's the trajectory that he's currently on. He's been the best defender for Boston, and he's scoring the ball at an incredibly efficient rate. Number 2, Minnesota. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they have to feel so dumb watching this series. They do. They did everything they could to stop Luka and Kyrie, and they couldn't stop them. And the role players for the Mavericks, because there was so much attention put on Luka and Kyrie, because of that, the Mavericks role players played well, and that's what did them in. And I just know that the Timberwolves sat back and they watched these first 2 games. And if the Timberwolves could, they would go back and try and they would defend Dallas the exact same way that Boston is defending them. They would, put all their attention on the other guys. They pay attention to PJ Washington, and they pay attention to Derrick Jones Jr. and Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford and these guys. They let Luka and Kyrie try to do everything themselves. And while they did that, they would very much limit PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford. I guess that's how you beat Dallas. That's what Boston's doing. And Minnesota has the defensive personnel to do that. So I just know Minnesota's sitting at home, and they are kicking themselves pretty greatly after that. Number 1, the team that I think is most frustrated sitting at home watching the NBA Finals are the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets had a 20-point lead in Game 7 over the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they lost. And they were at home. They blew it. And, it cost them a series, and it, in all seriousness, might have costed them an NBA title, because they would have beaten Dallas. I have no doubt about that. The Mavericks would have had no answer whatsoever for Jokic. Could they have figured out a way to slow down Jamal Murray? Sure. But Jokic would have just had his way in that series. And they had multiple defenders to throw at Luka and Kyrie and those guys. And they also match up with Boston incredibly well, because, as good as Al Horford is and as good as Porzingis is, those guys, they aren't guarding Jokic. They're both too small. Al Horford's too short. Kristaps Porzingis is too skinny. He would have had his way in that series, and they would have gotten whatever they wanted on offense. And so I have no doubt that Denver sitting at home with this sense of, man, like, if we just hadn't blown that 20-point lead, we'd be in the finals, we'd be playing Boston. It's a great matchup for us, and we would have a legitimate chance at winning this thing. And that just has to eat away at them. And I know that, Jokic and those guys kind of have this reputation for not being, or not those guys, just Jokic. I know he has this reputation for just, wanting to get to the offseason and wanting to go race his horses and do those things. But he's competitive, and I'm willing to bet that this is eating at him. I'm willing to bet that it bothers him that Luka has been crowned the best player in the world. And I'm excited to see what Jokic does this summer in the Olympics, and also when they come back next year. I'm also excited for Thursday and Saturday, because those are the Fever's next 2 games. And they aren't against the Connecticut Sun, who have accounted for a quarter of the games that the Fever have played this year. The Fever got crushed last night by the Sun. Not a surprise, not a big deal. I'm going to get into that game when we come back here in about 4 minutes. The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indies Sports Ticket. Last segment of the day. Let's make it a good one. Let's make it a great one, actually. Friday, Dan Dockett Show will be out and about at Back Nine Golf. You can register, get a table, and have a great time with him. I'll be here in the studio, so I will sadly not be there, but that's okay. I'll be all right. So, Fever absolutely crushed last night by the Connecticut Sun. Once again, I mean, they lost by 17. The game wasn't close. It's not a surprise, though. I mean, look, the Connecticut Sun are now 10-1 on the season. Okay? They have beaten the Fever three times this year already. Okay? And the Fever haven't beaten the Sun since 2021. Okay? The Sun became the second team in the WNBA this season to reach 10 wins, and the Fever are the second team to reach 10 losses on the season. And I mean, that's rough. It's rough. But let's talk about the person that everyone wants to hear about, Caitlin Clark. Okay, she finished with her fourth fewest points in a game this season. She went 3 of 8 from the field for 10 points. Okay, all those points came in the first half. Okay, she picked up her fourth foul with 4 minutes and 41 seconds left to go in the third quarter, and she didn't play the rest of the game. She sat on the bench for basically the last 15 minutes of the game, and a large part of it was defense. The defensive effort and the defensive intensity wasn't there for the Fever at all last night. And Christy Sides made a comment about it after the game, and then the media asked Caitlin Clark about the defense as well. Here was that altercation.
Coach and coach team was talking about just not being pleased with the effort, I guess, all around from the team. What was her message to you all in terms of that?
Yeah, I think it's just like we can't coach effort. This is a team you can't come out and be lackadaisical against. Like they're just that good. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and I don't think we had it from the jump. And obviously that's a little disappointing. But that's something they can coach. Effort is not something they can coach. They can coach X and O's, but they can't coach that. And I thought we just could have played with a lot better energy. I thought we let little things on the offensive end frustrate us, and we didn't play good defense. It seemed like everything they got was easy. Nothing was challenged, uncontested threes. We were giving up and ones. We put them at the free throw line, and that was the key to the game. Like, you can't foul this team. They lead the league in free throws attempted, I'm pretty sure. And that's exactly what we did. It's not a recipe to win many games.
That was Caitlin Clark on the lack of defensive effort last night. I mean, it was pretty apparent. It was obvious. They gave up way too many threes. They allowed the Sun to shoot 47% from three. They were 8 of 17. The Fever shot 38% and 9 of 24, but that's not going to cut it, especially when you get out rebounded by 15 and you give up 12 offensive rebounds. You can't allow that. You can't send your opponent to the line 24 times where the Sun were 21 of 24 from the stripe. I mean, like, that's effort stuff. You didn't box out. You didn't get in a stance. And when you got beat off the dribble, you fouled. Like, that's not winning basketball. You can't do that at any level and win. You can't. You can't do that if you want to win. And stuff like that is a large part of why the Fever are 3-10. It is, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter because people are showing up to watch Caitlin Clark play. Okay, fans in Connecticut were chanting, "We want Caitlin. We want Caitlin." Midway through the fourth quarter. Okay, even on the road, she is why people are showing up to watch these games. Okay, they're not doing that for anybody else. They're not doing it for Angel Reese. They're not doing it for the Las Vegas Aces. They're not doing it for anybody else. They're showing up to watch Caitlin Clark play, and that's it. And there's a part of me that feels bad for the fans that showed up because they showed up to see Caitlin Clark, and she didn't play much. She only played 22 minutes. She was a team low, minus 30 in those 22 minutes. It's not fun for anybody, but it's not unexpected. It's not. That's just part of being a rookie. There are ups and there are downs, and when you play against one of the best teams in the league, probably going to have a down night. You just are. I think it's unfair to expect rookies to produce on the road, especially when they're playing on the road against one of the best teams in the league. Okay, like young teams, which the Fever are an extremely young team, they don't play well on the road and they don't defend. And if you don't do those two things, then you're just not going to win very many games. right? If you want to find a positive, the Fever didn't turn the ball over a ton. They had 11 as a team. They forced 12. They scored 21 points off those turnovers. That's great. Caitlin Clark only had 3 turnovers. That is awesome. Aaliyah Boston, double-double, 14 points, 12 rebounds. That was needed. Okay, like Aaliyah Boston has had a rough start to the year, to say the least, and that can't happen. Right? Like in order for the Fever to achieve their goal of making the playoffs and grabbing that 8 seed or the 7 seed, Aaliyah Boston has to play well. And so last night, maybe that gets her going. We'll see. Last week, though, I said that better times could be coming for the Indiana Fever. They are 2 games into a 9-game stretch to close out this month that has a lot of winnable games on it. Last night was not one of them. They were supposed to lose last night. They are 1-1 in this 9-game stretch. They were supposed to beat the Washington Mystic, and they did. That's what they were supposed to do, and they won the game. They were supposed to lose last night, and they did. Like that's just kind of the way that it goes. And like this is a stretch where, if the Fever go 5-4, 6-3 maybe, then we should feel good about where the Fever are going. All right, a lot of winnable games. This should also be a stretch where Caitlin Clark really jumps off the screen like she did at Iowa. Okay, the next tough game in this relatively easy 9-game stretch comes on June 27th when they play the Seattle Storm. Outside of that, a lot of winnable games. The next game's on Thursday when they play the Atlanta Dream, who are 5-4. It's a winnable game. Okay, the Dream, they're not great. They're not terrible. Should be like this game should give us a decent idea of where the Fever are at. Then on Sunday at noon, they play the Chicago Sky, and I can't wait. I might try to get tickets. We'll see. But everyone that goes to that game, it'll be a lot of people, every one of them should boo the crap out of Angel Reese. And they should boo the crap out of the girl who hip-checked Caitlin Clark earlier in the season. Okay, that's what they should do. That's what I think is going to happen. And I'm here for it. On-court drama. Love it. Need all the on-court drama that I can get. Give me, the Caitlin Clark rules. Okay, because the Jordan rules for the Pistons, like, awesome. That's a great story. It's a great on-court drama. I need that. Sports thrives on things like that. But off-court drama, no way. Who needs it? Nobody. We don't want it either. Okay, we don't. We just want to enjoy the game and look at the things that happen on the floor. And, we want good, fun, competitive games. Speaking of being competitive, friend of the program, John Buzzard, asked me just a great question. I guess Buzzard beat his son in pickleball yesterday, playing him in golf today. Congrats, first of all, John, on the dub. But then he asked me a great question, which gives me just a million stories running through my head. John, he asked me this question. He spelled my name wrong, by the way, if you're looking at the screen. For my radio audience, he asked me the question, did your dad let you win at anything, or was he relentless in pursuing the W? My dad was undoubtedly relentless in pursuing the W. My dad was relentless in just making things hard when it came to athletic events and stuff like that. I'll never forget. He beat us in everything for as long as he could. I remember being 13 years old, the first time I beat him in one-on-one. I scored the last bucket, sprinted a quarter mile, ran all the way around my neighborhood. I mean, just took off. It was the best feeling ever. And it's, look, I'm not a parent. I'm not giving out advice. That's not what I'm doing. But I do think that just from my experience, there's value in not letting people beat you at things, because when they do beat you, like it feels so much better. It does. Because like in that moment when you win, there's this realization of all the hard work and things that you have worked through to get to that point. And it's the best feeling when you finally beat not even your dad, but just anybody at anything that has beaten you at something for a long time. And yeah, my dad was so relentless in pursuing wins. And literally everything. Like I remember we had a trampoline in our backyard growing up, and it took us forever to put that thing together. But we had a football, and we would go on the trampoline, me, my two brothers, and my dad. My dad's really young. He was really young when he had kids. So my dad's not even 50, and I'm 24. So, we're little, and we would play this game called four corners. My dad would get on his knees, and the game's pretty simple. We had a net around our trampoline. It was a square. You got to touch all four corners. That was it. And, man, we would touch the first three, and then my dad would just crush us into the net, man. And I never touched all four. My younger brother never touched all four. My older brother never touched all four. My dad made sure that didn't happen. And then we would play this other game where we would all stand up, including my dad. So he's, 2 heads taller than all of us. And we would take the football and we throw it in the air, and we would all jump on the trampoline and try to jump up and catch the football. And how none of us ever broke a bone, because it got so physical. We're like undercutting each other, and everyone's landing on top of each other and all that. My dad would go up, and he always caught it because he was, 34 and we were like 10. And he would come down with it, and he would look at all of us, and he would ask the same question every time. He'd be like, "Boys, do you know why I caught it?" We'd all be like, "Why, Dad?" And he'd look at us without skipping a beat, and he goes, "Because I wanted it more." And every single day we would play this game. And my dad, a very competitive person. He was a youth pastor for a long time, so played a lot of pickup hoops with high school students when he was doing that. And then when we moved to Arkansas, he became an actual pastor. And on Sunday afternoons, he would go out with the youth group, even though he wasn't the youth pastor, and we would go to our local high school football field, and we would play two-hand touch football. My senior year of high school, we're playing. And my dad's playing safety because he's, older, and he couldn't defend people. He couldn't play man-to-man coverage. That was just the weakness. And so he'd be like, "I'm going to play safety." I'll never forget, I line up in the slot, hit a little quick release, sprinting downfield, and the quarterback throws a jump ball. Me and my dad. And I go up, reach up over the top of him, catch it, absolutely moss him. I don't know if you guys know that segment on Monday Night Football, but they'll do the whole "you got moss" thing. So I jump over the top of my dad, catch it, come down with it. He falls. I walk into the end zone. And years later, I got my payback. I look at my dad, and I go, "Hey, Dad." I go, do you know why I caught that ball?" And he, very, very confused look on his face. He goes, I don't know, Jonathan, why?" And I was like, "Because I wanted it more." And just the biggest grin pops across his face. That's one of my favorite stories to tell about my dad, because I think it very much symbolizes, a lot of our relationship, everything that we did growing up. My dad did it with us, and we would compete at it. And it was great. It was great. Those are fond memories. And yeah, it was great. I love it so much. So thanks, John, for asking that question, because I love any excuse to tell that story. I hope my dad's listening, because I don't think he is. He didn't text me. Sometimes he'll tune in. So I'm gonna have to text him later and tell him to go back and listen. So yeah, John, he's competitive. He didn't let us win at anything. He beat us most of the times, but those moments where we'd win were really, really sweet. So that's gonna do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. What a way to wrap up the show. Just fantastic, great day. The Dan Dockett Show is coming up next. He'll be on from noon to 3, 1 o'clock. Rob Dibble, he's up. He's in Connecticut. He's going to give us the latest on Dan Hurley and that new contract that's coming. And then Danny Z of Outkick interviewed Caitlin Clark last night, and he's coming on at 2 o'clock. He's going to talk about that. I'm sure he's got an article up as well. So Danny Z at 2, Rob Dibble at 1. Tune in. The Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3. Thank you for tuning into the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Follow us on Twitter at Ticket1430. Follow me on Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith. Subscribe to the YouTube Indie Sports Ticket if you want to join the chat. It's a great time. The people in there, it's just a great community of people. Thank you again for tuning in to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 Eastern. I will talk to you guys then. Have a good one.